How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, conversationalists. It is Eric Erickson here across America. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. If you text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, all the links. And y'all know I got so distracted in the last segment by Candace Owens' stupidity that I forgot to tell you that the show is sponsored by Van Allen Golf, and you can go check out their fine golf equipment. They're amazing putter at vanallengolf.com, vanallengolf.com, or text the word golf to 33777. So those of you on the phones, be patient. I will get to you here in just a bit. But first, we got to talk about, well, the Fed is raising something. The Federal Reserve is meeting this week in Washington, D.C., and it is expected to raise something. Not interest rates. No. There will be no interest rate increase. There will be no interest rate decrease. The Federal Reserve is widely expected to raise its middle finger at Donald Trump. Fed officials are worried that bringing rates down right now could provoke prolonged inflation. It is well above their 2% target. This is from Colby Smith, the New York Times. What lies ahead for the Fed is a tenuous balancing act. Policymakers do not want to jeopardize the labor market by keeping rates too high for too long, but they also want to ensure they're restraining the economy enough to stamp out any lingering price pressures. Officials are contending with this as the institution finds itself under attack by a White House that wants borrowing costs to be much lower. Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, accused the administration earlier this month of opening a criminal investigation into his handling of costly renovations at the Fed's headquarters in Washington in retaliation for not cutting borrowing costs. A broadside that drew a rare rebuke from President Trump from Republican lawmakers. This also comes as Lisa Cook is fighting in the Supreme Court to preserve her job, and it seems like the Supreme Court's going to keep her there. The Fed deliberations right now have been uniquely fraught, with each subsequent quarter point cut last year beginning in September, officials grew more divided about how to cut rates. So let me just explain the basics here to you. I'm not an expert, but I know enough to be dangerous and to have people email me and complain. So the Federal Reserve has two functions. It used to only have one function, and now it has two functions. Its original function was to manage inflation, to minimize inflation. But its new extra function is to also maximize employment. So the Fed's got to maximize employment and minimize inflation, and they are two completely contradictory goals most of the time. You maximize employment by lowering interest rates, which stimulates the economy, which provokes inflation, which means you then got to raise rates. So you go up and down and up and down. And now there is, in economics, this idea that there is a natural rate. I'm going to pause here and say, experts, I'm not going to read your emails, so don't waste your time. I'm trying to explain this to a lay audience that doesn't care about your nuances. So essentially, there is a rate, not a natural rate, a neutral rate. There is a neutral rate. And when you set interest rates at that neutral rate point, you keep inflation low and you keep maximizing employment. What is the neutral rate? Well, it's like pornography. They'll know it when they see it. The neutral rate is a hypothetical. There's no way to say, do a mathematical calculation, say this is the neutral rate. You guess. You cut rates a quarter of a point, and then another quarter of a point, and then another quarter of a point, and you see where you are. And at some point, you'll get your inflation to about 2%. The economy will be humming along for a very long time. The neutral rate was pretty low, but the neutral rate fluctuates, and it has gone up because why? The Joe Biden massive spending package. Joe Biden's massive spending provoked inflation. The primary goal of the Federal Reserve is to stamp inflation out, to keep it at 2% or less. Why? Because inflation is not just economically destructive, it is nationally destructive. Let's go over to Iran for a moment. Why did the protests start happening in Iran? Massive inflation, leading to bank collapses, leading to people storming into the streets. In Argentina, why was Javier Milei elected? An outsider outcast. Why was he elected? Inflation. Why was Donald Trump, a man most Americans don't like, returned to office against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Inflation. Inflation is deeply destructive. As a result, the Federal Reserve prioritizes inflation even over maximizing employment. When inflation is low, they're like, okay, let's work on employment. And right now, there's another dirty little secret. I will keep nothing from my audience. You know how when Joe Biden was president and the economic numbers would come out and you'd all say, these can't be real, they must be doctoring the numbers. And then next month or two, they'd come out, they'd revise the numbers, and you'd say, aha, they rigged the numbers and now they're revising them. Well, a lot of people think Donald Trump's team is doing the same thing now because, remember, he hired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who is technically a nonpartisan appointee, and he wants to put someone in who's more of a political apparatchik. And so a lot of the Fed governors now and a lot of the outside people are like, they may be rigging the numbers. I don't know whether they are or they're not, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And the Trump team accused the Biden team of that. Now everybody else is accusing the Trump team of it because they fired the head of Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so the Fed's not sure the data is right. The Fed is also not sure the data is right because of the government shutdown. And the numbers will be revised eventually. There are a lot of people who simply don't know that the executive branch of government is being truthful with them on the data. And there are a lot of outside indicators that the economy is not doing as well as presented by the Trump team, although it certainly is doing better than it was in the Biden team. There's just a lot of unknowns. And into this, the Federal Reserve is meeting this week. And at this point, they have banked the idea that Donald Trump is going to throw a temper tantrum unless they give him exactly what he wants. Those of you who have children, over time, if your kid keeps throwing a temper tantrum, most parents begin to ignore the temper tantrum if they don't beat the snot out of the kid. They just ignore it. Your kid has a temper tantrum. The first time you try to calm him down. Maybe the second time you try to calm him down. By the third time, you're like, I'll try, but it's not going to work. The fourth time, you're like, nope, this is all performance. You get into the fifth or the sixth temper tantrum, and you're like, I may just need to smack him just because, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to ignore the crying. Your kid keeps waking up in the middle of the night crying. A lot of the child psychologists tell you, just let your kid cry. They'll go back to sleep. You don't need to go check on your child. If you go check on your child when your child cries and you give your child attention, your child's going to do this all the time to get more attention. You just got to ignore the kid. And it's hard. You don't want to ignore your kid. You don't want to ignore the President of the United States when he throws his temper tantrums. And the President throws his temper tantrums. And for a while there, the Fed would kind of send the signals that they send because they don't typically talk directly to the president. They'd send the signals. They'd maybe give him a 1/4 point rate cut. Well, now he's criminally investigating the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who the governors of the Federal Reserve actually like, as do many of the members of Congress. Republicans and Democrats really like Jerome Powell. They don't think he's perfect, but they like him. He communicates with them. He explains things to them in ways normal people can understand, and they appreciate that he speaks to them outside of jargon, and he speaks to them frankly. The Republicans like him, the Democrats like him, and they see the president's constant temper tantrums, and they're a little upset with the president, not at Jerome Powell. So the Fed can give the president the middle finger now. They've tried to humor him. They're tired of humoring him, and they're really worried about inflation. From the New York Times, in December, 2 members of the 12-person policy serving committee dissented against a rate cut in favor of standing pat, while 4 other officers registered soft dissents by penciling in rate forecasts that were higher than where rates ended the year. Their primary concern was inflation, which they worried was at risk of getting stuck above 2% target as the full effects of the tariffs materialized and the economy remained resilient. On the other end of the spectrum is Stephen Mirren, who joined the Fed's board in September after Mr. Trump nominated him and for a third straight meeting voted in favor of a larger half-point cut. Mr. Mirren has said that his colleagues are overly concerned about inflation and are risking a recession by not cutting more aggressively. These divisions have not disappeared, but they have greatly diminished now that rates are closer to a neutral level that does not rev up economic growth but does not restrain it either. That has given the central bank some breathing room, says William Dudley, who was president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York from 2009 to 2018. So, too, has the economic data, even though it's still impacted by distortions caused by last year's government shutdown. Inflation into the year more subdued than feared. The labor market, while sluggish, steadied last month with the unemployment rate slipping back to 4.4%. So they might be at the neutral rate. They might be close to the neutral rate. The economy is not on fire, but it's not in recession. Inflation is not at 2%, but it's not at 3%. It's somewhere in between. So they don't have to act, and why would they? I got to tell you, from my vantage point, your mileage may vary, I don't care. I think the president played his hand badly here. It was an impulse control issue for him. This full-throated attack on the Federal Reserve Chairman, the investigation of the Federal Reserve Chairman, the firing of the attempted firing of Lisa Cook. I mean, some of the lawyers should have gone to the president and said, "There's no way the Supreme Court throws out the structure of the Federal Reserve. There's no way that the Supreme Court gives up Federal Reserve's independence. They're just not going to do it. It's a no-brainer. They're not going to do it." I mean, Brett Kavanaugh has written multiple arguments and law review articles and publications in the last decade on the importance of preserving the sovereignty of the Federal Reserve. So you've already got 4 votes there. You got the 3 libs and Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh's not going to surrender the Federal Reserve. And do you really think the Chief Justice is? Or Amy Coney Barrett? Really? Do you really think they are? You may have a minority of Alito and Thomas, maybe with Gorsuch. But even the structure of the Federal Reserve is not really in contention before the Supreme Court right now. The president played his hand badly on this one. And the Federal Reserve has enough independence and clout, even among Republicans in Congress, that they can give the president the middle finger. And that's what they're going to do this week. They are not going to cut rates, I don't believe. I got no crystal ball here. But just reading the tea leaves and their prior statements and what we know is at stake right now, I don't think they're going to cut rates. And I think they're going to dare the president to blast them. They're not going to care at this point. And that makes the president look more and more like a paper tiger. It's like Kristi Noem boxed the president in on immigration. He had to do a change. He had to. But she went so maximalist, the only way the president can pivot makes him look like he's gone minimalist, which he hasn't done. But the people around him just keep boxing the president in. And that ultimately you have to conclude this is the president. It's not the people around him. Why? Because he picked those people and took their advice, and it keeps going badly for him. Hello, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The president has just made clear that Alex Preddy was not an assassin, nor did he want a mass casualty event. Not somewhat. He actually is explicitly rebuking Stephen Miller. We've got a number of calls. Nobody wanted to stay on air to ask the question, but I'll answer it for you on is Stephen Miller keep his job? Yes, Stephen Miller's going to keep his job. He's a hardliner on immigration, but he's a very trusted aide to the President of the United States, and he's in no danger of losing his job. I mean, that is the actual answer here. The president very much trusts him. They don't always see eye to eye on issues, and Trump gets the last say, but Miller is not going anywhere. So there's this, the left writes all this fan fiction stuff and comes up with these sorts of theories, and this is just not panning out for the left on Miller. He's got his job, and he's going to stay. Now, it's funny. His wife is blasting the head of Anthropic, the AI company, because he said he was committed to classical liberal values, and she's just liberalism. He's admitted he's liberal. No. Classical liberalism. The ideas of the American founding fathers were classical liberalism. So we call it conservatism today. In an age past, it was called classical liberalism, but classical liberalism and conservatism were basically, with some nuance, the same thing. It's the founding ideology of the founders. It just, my goodness, these people. Everybody wants a podcast and they becloud themselves. Calm down, folks. 877-973-7425 is the number. I'll take your phone calls when we get back on the other side of the break. Right now, I got to tell you about my tankless water heater from Rinnai. Did it again last night. I actually sat in my bathtub last night. I didn't get in the hot tub outside. Why? It was 19 degrees outside. 19 degrees. And I was cold. And I just wanted to be hot, and it was cold in the house. So I filled up my my bathtub with a lot of hot water, a little cold water to bring it down so I didn't burn myself. And I just sweated, and it was glorious. And then my kids could take showers, and we didn't fight over the hot water. Y'all, I love my hot water heater. It is a tankless water heater from Rinnai. It is made in the great United States of America, not very far from where I live. And you can get one. They are reasonably priced, and you'll never run out of hot water. Ditch your tank. Go to talkingtankless.com. Talkingtankless.com. The Rinnai tankless water heater. You can have hot water forever in your house. You never run out of it. Your kids don't fight over hot water. In our case, our power bill went down because we had an electric water heater, and the power bill went down. It's fantastic. TalkingTankless.com is the website. TalkingTankless.com. The Rinnai tankless water heater. You will never run out of hot water again thanks to Rinnai. And yes, thank you, Rinnai. Hello. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program. I mentioned earlier the Anthropic CEO, their AI chatbot is called Claude. I've actually got it open on my computer right now. And I do this on purpose. So in the mornings of the last week, I've been running an experiment. In the mornings, I've been saying, Claude, will you review the headlines for me? Markets, legislation, all that. And Claude gives me a breakdown every morning now, and it's been really good. And in fact, unlike ChatGPT, Claude doesn't really hallucinate. It hasn't been making stuff up. So here's Claude's, I say that on purpose there, here's Claude's comprehensive show prep for today. 1, markets overview. Mixed performance this morning as markets await the Fed decision. S&P 500, NASDAQ futures showing modest gains. The Dow lags. Corporate earnings, United Health down 15%. Why? Because of rumblings in Congress about flat fees for Medicare. Boeing beat earnings and revenue with 57% quarterly sales jump. Stocks down 3% as the beat was driven by digital aviation solution sales rather than core operations. General Motors exceeded quarter four expectations. American Airlines missed fourth quarter earnings but provided upbeat guidance. Stocks up 4%. Pinterest announced 15% workforce reduction. 780 employees going to be laid off with restructuring as it pivots to AI. Consumer confidence has dropped. University of Michigan sentiment improved, however. One-year inflation expectations fell 4% now. And then it gets into a Fed overview. Nobody thinks there's going to be a rate cut. Then it gets into major policy. Says this is becoming a major story. There's the second fatal shooting in 3 weeks. Alex Preddy, 37-year-old ICU nurse. By the way, there is a report now that Preddy last week got a broken rib in a scuffle with agents. He was agitating last week. It was involved in an anti-ICE group and did get hurt last week before getting killed this week. Anyway, Claude is giving me the overview, and then it gets to this. Congress and legislation. This is what's happening in the United States Congress this week, according to Claude AI, which is now widely regarded as the most accurate AI chatbot. Number one, this morning, Pete Hegseth was confirmed as defense secretary via Vice President Vance in a tie-breaking vote with 3 Republicans joining Democrats in opposition. Senate is proceeding with confirmation votes on other Trump cabinet picks, including Sean Duffy, Lee Zeldin, Doug Burgum, Christopher Wright, and Doug Collins. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s hearing is scheduled for the Health and Human Services secretary position. That's happening this week in Congress, according to the best and most proficient AI chatbot out there. All of that stuff happened this time last year. And then it goes through a list of executive actions that are happening this year, and all of them are also things that happened last year, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday announced a freeze of almost all State Department and USAID foreign aid. Completely getting all of that stuff wrong. Now, I bring all this up to you because I keep hearing about the rise of AI. We were on the front porch having bourbon and cigars on Sunday night. Philip and I were talking about this stuff. And, he pointed out there was an article we read a while back, and it made a very good point that AI is very good at things people are bad at. And AI is very bad at things people are good at. You and I, we are creative, relational beings. In fact, this Sunday, I'm going to be teaching my ongoing lesson in Genesis 1. A lot of people have asked if I've written it down. Do I have audio? I'm afraid I don't. But we'll get to the sixth day of creation. Man is not meant to be alone. We are relational beings. We are created in the image and likeness of God. We're creative people. We're creative. AI is not creative. In fact, the AI movies and things that have come out, there are some that are very, very, very funny. I have seen some of the AI things, and I got to tell you, y'all know my sense of humor is a little dark. It's a little perverse. Some of you really wouldn't like it. I actually thought I saw a couple of people. When was it? It was Grok it was ChatGPT. I think one of them. You could put famous people in, and there were some of Martin Luther King giving some very funny speeches, and I laughed, and then people were like, "Oh, you're a racist if you laugh." I was like, "No, this was deeply funny." But here's the thing: those were all done by people. They used AI. Follow along with me on this. It was people who couldn't do the animation themselves used AI. But the creativity and the lines and the humor all came from the people. The AI did not make the jokes. There was one of Donald Trump and Joe Biden as lovers. That's right. Donald Trump and Joe Biden as lovers. It included jokes on dementia and wearing Depends and Viagra, and it was pretty depraved and also very funny. AI made the cartoon, but someone had to sit there and direct it to make the cartoon. Someone had to sit there and give it the script. Some person other than AI had to do those things. The creative aspect of it is not going to go away. There's no way AI could do my job. Someone told me the other day that something like 14% of Gen Zers are listening to AI podcasts. And the podcasts they're listening to that are AI generated are basically just the news headlines or the hot gossip of the day. It's not conversational. It's not storytelling. It's not like that. It's just here are the headlines. Here are the headlines. I shall tell you the headlines. It was like Stephen Hawkins, except in a normal voice, without going to Epstein Island. There's no way that AI can do the creativity that people need. And so this gets to my son wants to be an architect. Here's something I've done with Claude. Claude is helping me design a house. Now, Claude's not actually going to design the house I want to build. I just wanted to experiment with it. And it told me that it used to be able to, based on what I want to generate some blueprints for me. Now, you got to go through a very lengthy process of Q&A with Claude where it interviews you about the house you want before it builds. And I thought it was very creative. And that aspect of an architecture firm is probably going to go to AI to a degree. But AI can only iterate. It can't actually create. I bring all this up because Anthropic CEO has been talking about the fallout from AI over time, the jobs that will be lost. And he says that all of the people in charge of Anthropic have pledged 80% of their income to essentially saving humanity from the ravaging effects of AI, and that he himself finds it absurd that so many countries are letting this stuff move forward. He also says he thinks that letting NVIDIA sell their high-tech chips to China is like arming North Korea with nukes. Says it's a very bad idea, but this is where the Trump administration is headed right now, allowing China to buy the bleeding-edge chips. And the head of Anthropic is an American first and says it would be a very bad thing if we let China get ahead of us in AI. And that someone's going to get ahead in AI, it might as well be us. And we can't let the companies control it because the companies are going to do what's in it for them, not what's in it for nation states and for societies. But also, if government smothers it in regulation, China is going to use it for nefarious ends. Bloomberg News has a story on all of this playing out right now with Claude. Anthropic is finally having its own ChatGPT moment. A powerful new version of the Claude chatbot can now take actions on a computer, and the broad repercussions of this advance are impossible to predict, but they may well be painful for white-collar workers. The San Francisco-based startup, which has raised more than $30 billion since its founding in 2021, frames itself as the most safety-conscious of the artificial intelligence developers. Its founder split from OpenAI after deeming its direction too commercial. And the cautious approach has helped the company cultivate a promising business selling trustworthy chatbots to companies. About a year ago, Anthropic released Claude Code for software developers. It became one of the best-regarded AI coding tools among engineering teams at companies like Netflix, Spotify, and NVIDIA, and was on pace to achieve $1 billion in annual revenue 6 months after launch, according to Anthropic. Programmers liked that Claude Code could plug directly into a computer's terminal, the text-based interface where they type commands rather than click through menus. That meant Claude Code could see their files, interrogate their source code, and execute tasks automatically like a colleague sitting at their machine, rather than a tool they copied and pasted from. When Anthropic's engineers noticed that people without programming experience were using the tool, they were struck with an idea. Perhaps Claude Code could excel at using a computer. Computer code is a near-perfect mirror of sights, sounds, and actions in the digital world, so why couldn't an AI programmer be a computer operator too? Over 10 days, Anthropic's engineers used Claude Code to build a more user-friendly version of itself, one that had the look and feel of a regular chatbot. They didn't write lines of code, but rather used everyday language to guide Claude Code in the black terminal of their laptops. The result was Claude Codework, which is rolled out last week and now available to anybody with a $20 subscription. And you can begin programming and kill off the white-collar jobs. You know which jobs aren't going to be killed off? The creative class. My son wants his architecture degree, wants to go to Sanford. Sanford's already thinking about how they can bring in kids to be in an architecture program and not have their jobs ended by AI. And the creative aspect is part of it. Being multi-talented, multi-functioning, designing interiors and also designing the homes together. It's going to be ways to go forward. But also the plumbers, the welders, the actual people who build the computers, the electricians, those jobs aren't going to be done necessarily by robots, nor are they going to be done by the cloud. And also, here comes Claude. This is a big story. Claude is highly updated. It's able to generate computer code. It's able to read computer code. It's able to do all these things. And when your host asks it a simple question of give me the headlines of today, Claude has given me headlines from a year ago and doesn't seem to know that those aren't the headlines of today. Now, let's see what happens in real time. I've given you all this data, so I've got it open here. Claude, is that legislative agenda accurate, or is it from last year? And if it is from last year, what actually is happening this week? Let's do this together, folks, in real time. What does Claude say about this? It's scanning. And now it's thinking, you are absolutely right to catch that. I apologize for the confusion. Let me see what's actually happening in Congress this week. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The House is meeting in a pro forma session. The Senate is convening at 3 p.m. with one vote scheduled. The Pregnant Students Fairness Act, requiring institutions of higher education to disseminate information on rights, accommodations, and resources for pregnant students. I've mentioned my humor. I'm not sure I would, in a line about a Pregnant Students Fairness Act, talk about dissemination of information. That's just me. Cabinet confirmations. That actually happened last year, not this year. The appropriations update. Actually, the appropriations package I referenced was passed last year. So the actual story is Congress is doing not a whole lot this week. The House is doing something pro forma, and the Senate only has one procedural vote. Had I not known enough to know that Claude was wrong, Claude would have never known it was wrong. That's what we're actually dealing with here in the big spooky world of AI. Machines that are getting smarter, but no, folks, they're not there yet. A lot of the hype is to lure investors, not you. So I just got this email from listener David, and I was kicking myself going into break that I hadn't made the point beforehand. So he says, I'm a professional engineer. There's a problem with AI that engineers and architects, that you got to have sealed drawings and reports. When I seal drawings or reports, I'm creating a document that presents the truth as I know it. A seal is also necessary on plans and specifications for buildings and modifications of building permits. It creates a potential liability for the person sealing the document if there are errors in the design that created the problems. AI can create documents and can replicate a seal and a signature. It's a potential problem. But here's the larger issue for everybody, and that is, yeah, you got to have certified documents and seals, and you've got to have specifications. So what's going to happen is the lower level, entry level positions, the data entry positions, the basic design positions, those are going to get eaten up by AI. But your engineers and your architects and your CPAs, they're still going to be necessary, because there is no way on God's good earth a licensing entity is going to give up the power and prestige of its license to a computer. You may get AI to do your taxes instead of TurboTax, but businesses are still going to have certified public accountants. You're still going to have CPAs. And the fact of the matter is, as a lawyer, a former lawyer, I can say this. The best lawyers and the best CPAs are the ones who you can get on the phone and have a chat with no paper trail. Your AI chatbot definitionally is going to have a paper trail. So you want your accountant to find creative ways around portions of the tax code? Your AI chatbot's not going to be able to do that. Your actual human being accountant with some creativity is going to find you a way to do it. And as a buddy of mine who's a CPA says, there are hard accountants and soft accountants. The hard ones are the ones who put everything in writing with the documented paper trail. In case there's ever an audit, they can say, nope, not me, wasn't me, it's all his fault. And the soft accountants are the ones you can talk to on the phone and say, all right, we'll try this. It might work. It might not work, but I'm willing to try. Those of you in these professional classes know exactly what I'm talking about. As a lawyer, sometimes you want to give advice to your client on the phone and say, hey, I wouldn't do this if I were you, and that's my advice. But you can consider this. You're not going to leave the paper written trail here. There are also the standards of ethics and the codes of conduct for the professional classes. AI is not going to get around any of that. Essentially, AI is going to wipe out the lowest rung of computer programmer, the lowest rung of designer, the lowest rung of paper pusher. And so colleges now, this again gets to my son going to Stanford, is colleges are going to have to put a lot of time into how do you jump ahead of the lower rung and get into your position? How do you start at a higher position than you could have started when you come right out of college? And part of that is you're going to have to spend an extra year or two getting your master's degree to jump into some of these positions coming out of college now. And that's just going to have to be the default with AI taking the lowest rung jobs, the paper pusher jobs. Now, Vision Computers actually has people you can talk to who are real, who can help you figure out how to bring AI efficiencies into your office if you want to talk to them about it. Call them at 404-COMPUTER. Go to visioncomputers.com. They can work with you on your managed IT platform. Find ways for them to be more efficient so your employees are more productive and efficient. Vision Computers can take over your managed IT. Your employees get human beings to talk to who help them with their computer needs. They can remote in if need to take care of problems. Your employees can get really productive. Vision Computers can also work with you to help protect you or your business from scammers and fraudsters, from the charlatans of the tech world, and teach you how to integrate AI. If you need to find efficiencies and make your employees more efficient, they can help you. You call them at 404-COMPUTER. Go to visioncomputers.com. They can build you computers, and their tech support comes free with the new computers. They can also upgrade your existing computers. They can be your managed IT solution. They work with anyone in the United States of America. Any one of you can call them at 404-COMPUTE and see how Vision Computers can help make you or your company more efficient. 404-COMPUTE and visioncomputers.com.